Everyone has to make sacrifices. That's what she said, her voice as cold as the glass table between us. Vanessa Claymore sat across from me, her fingers tapping rhythmically on the screen of her tablet. Each tap a deliberate reminder of control. Your compensation package is no longer aligned with the company's direction, she said, barely glancing up. Effective immediately, your base salary will be reduced by 40%. Commission structures are also being revised to reflect performance-based incentives. Her tone was clinical, like she was reading numbers off a spreadsheet, not dismantling someone's career. My name is Raymond Blake. I'm 54 years old, with salt and pepper hair that started turning in my late 30s, and deep lines that come from years of real conversations, not office lighting. For the past 16 years, I've been the Senior Vice President of Sales at Westmark Millworks, a commercial supplier based in Austin, Texas. But my title never told the full story. I wasn't just a VP, I was the engine. I personally managed our 10 most significant accounts. I wasn't selling products. I was building trust. I knew these clients by heart, their kids' names, the names of their dogs, their favorite vacation spots. When something broke down, they called me before they called their own internal teams. We were more than partners. We were allies now. That trust, built over thousands of phone calls and late-night problem-solving sessions, was being reduced to a line item. Vanessa, who had been with the company for all of 3 months, slid a new contract folder across the table toward me. The terms were clear: a steep pay cut, restructured commissions that would make it nearly impossible to maintain my current income, and reduced benefits. She had arrived just after Driftmore Labs acquired our company, armed with a Harvard MBA and a corporate warpath. Attitude: she'd spent her first weeks reading spreadsheets, holding closed-door meetings, and slowly replacing long-time leadership with her own people. To her, I wasn't a person. I was a cost. Is there a timeline for the transition? I asked, keeping my voice level. Effective immediately, she said with a tight smile. We need everyone aligned with the new direction. I stood, slowly, and extended my hand. Thank you for the clarity. That threw her off. She'd expected resistance, maybe even desperation. But I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction. I left her office calmly, nodding to Thomas, the CFO, as I passed. He had joined Westmark the same year I did, and his eyes told me everything his mouth couldn't say. This wasn't about alignment. It was about elimination. Back at my office, I packed a few personal items into a cardboard box. Nothing dramatic, just a photo of my daughters at graduation, a client-gifted pen set, and an old award from my early years. No speech, no tears, just quiet departure. As I loaded the box into my car, I took one last look at the building where I'd poured 16 years of my life. I didn't slam the door. I didn't spin the tires. I just drove off with 16 years of client relationships that Vanessa had handed to the competition without a second thought. I had built that sales division from the ground up. When I joined Westmark in 2010, the company was a regional vendor scraping $9 million in annual sales. By the time I left, we were pushing $80 million. And over $14 million of that was directly tied to my personal accounts. My father used to run a modest cabinet shop in Fort Worth, and he taught me everything I knew about wood: the grain, the strength, the finish. I could talk to architects about technical specs and pivot to pricing negotiations with procurement teams, all in the same meeting. Oliver Wainwright, the company's founder, recognized what I brought to the table. He used to say, "You're not just selling wood, Ray. you're selling trust. He gave me the freedom to build my department my way. I hired young, hungry reps and taught them the old school truth. People buy from people they trust. And for a long time, it worked. When Oliver sold the company to Driftmore last year, I wasn't shocked. I'd seen mergers before, but the red flags started immediately. First, a new CEO with no experience in our industry. Then, a flashy marketing director who wanted to modernize everything. And then came Vanessa with her sharp suits and buzzwords, like operational efficiency and scalable performance. Little by little, things began to change. Travel approvals became a battle. Entertainment budgets vanished. Weekly meetings got pushed to monthly, then stopped altogether. We're streamlining, Vanessa had said, eyes cold, but what she really meant was, we're phasing you out. Then came the strangest move. She began contacting my clients directly. She questioned pricing agreements I'd carefully negotiated years ago, the ones that kept our clients loyal through multiple price hikes. She brought in 2 of her former colleagues and gave them regional manager roles, bypassing the people I had trained and trusted. One afternoon, I saw her at lunch with Gabriella, my newest hire. When I approached, Gabriella looked guilty, while Vanessa waved casually, like we were old friends bumping into each other. Later that day, Gabriella muttered something about team building when I asked about it. I didn't press. I didn't have to. I already knew what was coming. That night, I sat at my home office, staring at spreadsheets and contracts. 16 years. 16 years of steady growth, of reputation built, not bought. And now I was being dismissed like a worn-out tool. That's when my phone buzzed. It was a text from Frank Donnelly, the purchasing director at Western Commercial. Our biggest client. Heard about changes at Westmark. You okay? Call me. Frank and I went back 12 years. I'd helped him renegotiate during a supply chain crisis, advised him through to management restructures, and even offered college advice for his son. We weren't just business associates, we were brothers in arms. I called him immediately. Ray, what the hell is going on over there? He said before I could even say hello. Some woman called me this morning, said she's taking over our account, talking about optimizing vendor structures and reassessing value propositions. Who the hell is she? That would be Vanessa Claymore, I replied evenly. She tried to tell me we needed to revise our payment terms, Frank continued, now clearly frustrated. We've been on net 45 for a decade. What's going on? I'm not sure how long I'll be staying, I said truthfully. There was a pause. Then Frank lowered his voice. Ray, if you end up somewhere else, call me before I have to deal with Harvard Barbie again. That was the moment everything became clear. My title didn't matter. My office didn't matter. What mattered was 16 years of loyalty, service, and trust, and all of it could walk right out the door with me. The night after my call with Frank, I poured myself a neat bourbon and opened my laptop. The cursor blinked back at me as if daring me to move forward. I started composing an email to Daniel Harrington, the vice president at Pinnacle Supply Group. We'd met at a trade conference 2 years ago. He had mentioned, over a drink and a cigar, that Pinnacle was looking to expand its commercial millwork division but hadn't yet found the right leadership. I never took that comment seriously until now. I didn't send the email just yet. I saved it to drafts and shut my laptop. I needed clarity, not impulse. The following morning, my phone started ringing earlier than usual. 3 more clients had already been contacted by Vanessa. 3 more clients who had known me for over a decade. Each of them said the same thing in different ways. They were concerned. Concerned about changes, about the tone, about being treated like numbers instead of partners. And each of them asked the same question: where are you going? By mid-morning, it was clear Vanessa was trying to secure what she thought were company. Relationships without understanding they weren't hers to claim. These weren't client IDs in a database. These were people I had flown out to visit when their warehouses flooded. People I'd helped source emergency materials for when their vendors fell through. They remembered me not because I closed deals, but because I showed up when it mattered. I drove to Westmark's office one final time to clear out the last of my things. There was no big send-off, no farewell lunch, not even a signed card, just silence. As I packed up the rest of my files, Thomas, our CFO, stepped quietly into the room and handed me a folded sheet of paper. Your client revenue figures, he said softly, and their annual average spend, just in case you ever need it. I didn't need to ask why he gave it to me. He knew what I was worth, even if no one else did anymore. That afternoon, I finalized my resignation letter, called my lawyer to review my non-compete clause. As expected, I couldn't sell millwork or direct competitors' products for 6 months, but the clause didn't prevent me from maintaining professional relationships. It didn't bar me from consulting, and it certainly didn't bar clients from calling me first. I opened that draft email to Daniel and hit send. By the next morning, Daniel had already replied. He wanted to talk urgently. Within 48 hours, we were sitting in a sleek downtown office, shaking hands over coffee and opportunity. We want you to come build something from the ground up, Daniel said. We don't need rebranding. We need someone who knows how this industry works. Someone clients already trust. It was the offer I didn't know I needed. Senior Vice President of Business Development, full autonomy, and the green light to build my own team. I accepted with no hesitation. Sometimes doors don't close. Sometimes they swing wide open if you have the courage to knock. A week later, I made my final call to Vanessa. It was short, professional, and offered a smooth transition plan. I'll stay for 2 weeks, I said. I'll hand off my accounts personally. Answer any questions your new team may have. That won't be necessary, she interrupted coolly. We've already briefed Gabriella on all your clients. Your CRM notes will suffice, and frankly, your approach is rather outdated. Outdated, that word again, like a song she played on repeat. I didn't argue. Why would I? She had already made the worst mistake an executive could make. She underestimated the human element. She thought notes in a CRM could replicate a decade of nuance. A spreadsheet doesn't know when a client's daughter is getting married, or when a delivery needs to be rerouted because of a last-minute site change. I returned my company property that Friday. 3 days later, I met with Frank for lunch. He hadn't returned any of Gabriella's calls, and Vanessa had even escalated things to his boss. She sent me a 48-question satisfaction survey. Frank scoffed, cutting into his steak, then followed it up with a deck on customer success metrics. I don't need metrics. I need someone who answers the phone at 7 p.m. when a project goes sideways. I didn't pitch anything. I didn't need to. He slid his card across the table. Call me when you're officially on board. Let's talk numbers. Later that week, I received a certified letter from Westmark's legal team. It was a gentle reminder, or rather, a warning. My non-compete was still valid. The letter named every account I'd ever touched and implied that any attempt to redirect business would be seen as a violation. My lawyer read it and laughed. "They're nervous," he said, "and they should be." A day later, I got a call from Harold Lang, CEO of Northwell Construction, another top 10 client. He sounded livid. Vanessa had contacted him too, trying to change long-standing payment terms and restructure his vendor agreement. "She says our net 45 arrangement is inefficient," he growled. "We've had that set up for 11 years. Suddenly, she thinks she can optimize it." I didn't sell him on Pinnacle. I simply answered his questions. Before we hung up, he said, "Ray, if you're with someone else, send me the paperwork." The dominoes were starting to fall. By the end of the first month, I had officially joined Pinnacle. I hired 2 trusted reps from my former network. I set up meetings, quietly, respectfully, but the calls kept coming. Builders, developers, general contractors, one by one, they were walking away from Westmar. Not because I asked them to, but because they wanted the trust back. By the second month at Pinnacle, my days found rhythm. My new office overlooked downtown Austin, sunlight spilling over construction sites I once helped supply through a different company, but everything was different now. This time, I was building from scratch, not with timber, but with trust, momentum, and the kind of quiet confidence that only comes after surviving a professional betrayal. One morning, Daniel and I met to review progress. He was already impressed. "We've been trying to break into Treelock's territory for years," he said, referring to my former company by its new name under Driftmore Labs. "Frank, Donnelly never returned a single call until your name came up. You're the key, Ray. You're the reason they're listening." But I knew it wasn't just about name recognition. It was about service, showing up when no one else would. It was about remembering birthdays, rushing emergency orders, knowing when to stop talking and just listen. Relationships are earned, not assigned. And in an age where everything was becoming automated and optimized, personal connection had become a competitive advantage. I hadn't even approached any of my former clients, yet 4 of the top 10 had already come over. They brought contracts, they brought loyalty, and most importantly, they brought word of mouth. Meanwhile, the tension from my old company simmered. One afternoon, my phone rang with a familiar number, Vanessa Claymore. Her voice, once composed and confident, now carried the tightness of panic. "We need to talk," she said without greeting. I met her at a coffee shop near my new office. She arrived early, already nursing a lukewarm latte. Her designer sharpness dulled just a bit. I barely sat down before she blurted, "This has to stop." I raised an eyebrow. "Stop, what? You know what clients are leaving us? 4 major accounts in 8 weeks, and they all name you. This could qualify as a breach of your separation agreement." I stirred my coffee slowly. "I haven't solicited a single Treelock client. Check the timeline. My non-compete prevents me from selling Pinnacle's current division isn't millwork. It's broader construction supply. That was your legal team's wording." "You're exploiting a loophole," she said, her voice sharpening. "I'm honoring an agreement," I replied, cool and steady. "Perhaps your lawyers should have written it more carefully." She leaned forward. "The board is asking questions about retention, about forecasts, about you." Her eyes betrayed something I hadn't seen before: fear. "We can make this easy," she continued. We're open to consulting deals, or compensation if you're willing to step back from certain accounts. That was when I knew she didn't just want the bleeding to stop. She wanted control back. But that control was never hers to begin with. I'm not interested in any arrangement, Vanessa, I said, standing. I'm just doing my job. You should try it sometime. That night, Frank from Western Commercial called again. Our contract's up for renewal, he said plainly. Vanessa's been calling me every day. She even offered to beat your price by 5%. That's a strong offer, I admitted. It is, he agreed. But this isn't just about price. This is about reliability. About someone who knows what it takes to get a project done on time. You've never let us down, Ray. So here's what I'm thinking. 2 weeks later, Western Commercial awarded Pinnacle a 2-year supply contract worth $4.2 million annually. It was a massive win, the kind that changes company positioning overnight. It made the rounds in industry publications, and suddenly Pinnacle Supply wasn't just a rising star, we were a real threat. That same day, I received an email from Thomas, my old CFO. The subject line was simple: "You'll want to see this." Attached was a screenshot of an internal announcement from Trillac. Vanessa Claymore was being reassigned to strategic development initiatives, a polite way of saying she was out. The email also noted that the board was initiating a search for a new sales director. I didn't reply to Thomas. I didn't need to. The silence between former colleagues says more than any words could. The very next morning, I stood before my team in our conference room. A quarterly review report glowed on the wall screen behind me. $13.7 million in new business. Projections moving toward $22 million by year's end. 8 of my former top 10 accounts were now with Pinnacle, not because I asked them to come, but because they chose to. Daniel walked in, holding a bottle of champagne. "The board approved your expansion proposal," he announced. "Full green light, more staff, more marketing, more freedom. We want you to keep doing whatever it is you're doing." As the team clapped and glasses clinked, my phone buzzed. Again, another message from Thomas. "Earnings call in 30 minutes. It read, "Might want to listen." I stepped away from the celebration and dialed in. The voice of Treelock's CEO, Raymond Peters, echoed through the speaker. While we anticipated some volatility after our structural changes, he began, "Our commercial division has experienced unexpected client attrition." An analyst jumped in. "Can you quantify that attrition? Because our data suggests has lost nearly 20% of its annual revenue in just 2 quarters. There was a long, awkward pause before Peters replied, "Those numbers are speculative, but we are implementing an aggressive client retention strategy to stabilize performance." Another analyst pressed further. "Is it accurate that Western Commercial, your largest account, recently signed with Pinnacle Supply Group?" Silence. "We're in ongoing discussions with all of our key accounts," he finally muttered. When I returned to the room, the team was laughing over a joke someone made. The energy was electric, fresh, inspired, and fully bought into the mission. I glanced out the window, down at the city below. Somewhere in a cold boardroom, someone was reading a financial report and realizing just how expensive a miscalculation could be, and I didn't have to say a single word. A year to the day after Vanessa Claymore slid that insulting packet across the table and told me my package was outdated. I sat in my expanded corner office at Pinnacle Supply Group. The floor was new, the view was sharper, and the team outside my door had grown from 2 hungry reps to 11. high performers with a dedicated support staff and a results-driven attitude. Our division had just closed the books at $26.3 million in revenue, beating even our most optimistic projections. I didn't frame awards on the wall or hang company slogans. The only decoration on my desk was a photo from our holiday dinner. My team, relaxed, smiling, gathered around a long wooden table under soft light. There was no ego in the room that night, only pride. And that's what made all the difference. You can build a business on spreadsheets, but you build a legacy on people. Then came the unexpected knock. My assistant buzzed in. "Raymond, there's a Vanessa Claymore here to see you." No appointment. I raised an eyebrow. "Send her in," I said, curiosity more than anything guiding the decision. She entered a moment later. Not the same woman who once swept into Westmark with designer heels and polished confidence. No, this Vanessa was softer around the edges. Her suit looked off the rack. Her posture lacked the sharpness of control. She looked like someone who'd recently been told they weren't as indispensable as they believed. "Thank you for seeing me," she said, remaining standing, almost awkwardly, even as I gestured to a chair. "What can I do for you?" I asked calmly. "I'm with Hamilton Group now, business consulting. We're doing a case study on Pinnacle's client retention strategy, and I was hoping to get your insight." I almost smiled at the irony. The same woman who once called my methods old-fashioned now wanted to study them. "I think you already know my approach, Vanessa," she nodded. There was a quiet stiffness in her tone. "I miscalculated," she admitted. "You did." She looked around the office, her eyes lingering on the team visible through the glass. "The market talks, you know, about how you took down an entire company without ever saying a word." Said nothing. She reached into her bag and slid a business card across my desk. "If you ever want to discuss trends or maybe collaborate in the future." I glanced at the card, then looked back up at her. "I appreciate the offer," I said, standing, "but I'm fully booked these days." She left a few moments later without another word. I picked up her card, looked at it one last time, then fed it slowly into the shredder. That evening, I drove across town to my daughter's house for dinner. She'd just been promoted to senior architect at her firm. Her new place had a patio that overlooked the hills, and she'd invited me for steaks and celebration. "How's work, Dad?" she asked as we watched the sunset settle into the trees. "Good," I replied simply, smiling. "I'm building something that'll last. Not with wood this time, but with something stronger. Trust, respect, and a team that understood that people were not lines on a graph, but the foundation of everything worth building." Weeks passed, and Pinnacle kept growing. Western Commercial's contract brought inquiries from even more developers. Former clients who had been hesitant were now calling us directly, asking how we could help, not if, but how. I worked hard to make sure every new relationship started the way I'd built the old ones, with honesty, availability, and accountability. The formula wasn't complicated. It just required care. Then one afternoon, I received a short email from Thomas. Subject FYI, industry. Attachment was a clipped article from a respected construction industry journal. Westmark loses 24% revenue after leadership overhaul. Experts cite misjudged strategy shift. It quoted an anonymous former employee, one I knew had probably been in the room with Vanessa during her rise. The quote read, "They didn't understand what made the company great. They thought the clients were loyal to the brand. They were loyal to the man who picked up the phone." I leaned back in my chair. That line hit me harder than any number on a chart. It was quiet validation, louder than applause. I didn't build my reputation overnight, and Vanessa hadn't destroyed hers overnight either. But the difference was I had earned mine later that month. Daniel called me into his office. "You're going to need to start thinking bigger," he said, sliding a folder toward me. "The board is expanding, and they want you on it." I looked at the folder, then at Daniel. "You sure?" "I'm just getting this division into cruising altitude." "Exactly," he said. "They want your mindset shaping more than just one team. You're not just building accounts, you're building culture." The following week, I accepted the position, and I made one quiet promise to myself, that no matter how high I climbed, I'd never stop doing what got me here. Answering calls, showing up, and remembering that the best business strategy is simply being someone people want to work with. Years from now, when I retire, no one will remember the size of my corner office or the font on my business card, but they'll remember how I treated them. That's how legacies are built. Not through fear or metrics. Through trust. Vanessa had tried to erase my name from Westmark's future. Instead, she helped write the opening chapter of mine, and I didn't just win back what was mine. I built something even better.